Today I'm making a fermented peach hot sauce. For this sauce I'm using 1.5 pounds of various peppers, mainly jalapenos and purple UFOs, but I also threw in about 5 habaneros just to give it some extra heat. So here I'm rough chopping those and adding them to a bowl, getting them ready to put in the fermentation jar. And next I'm going to rough chop the rest of my fresh ingredients. So that's 1 red onion and then 6 peaches. In my clean fermentation jar, I'm just going to layer all these ingredients so they all get to know each other. But I'm going to end with a hefty layer of peppers and onions, just because I think if anything were to mold in this one, it would be the peaches due to the sugar. So I'm going to try to keep them well below the surface of this brine. This is a 3.5% brine that I made just with kosher salt and water. And I'm just going to pour it till it covers everything. The last thing I'm going to put in the jar is just a Ziploc bag with some water. You can use a glass weight, but this is what I use. It keeps everything below the surface and prevents any mold, because mold is an aerobic bacteria, and for the fermentation we really want anaerobic bacteria to do all of the work. Now that all my ingredients are placed in the jar, I've just got to screw on a clean lid and then pop the airlock into it. What the airlock does is allows gases to escape as fermentation occurs while not allowing bad germs into the jar. I let my jar sit in a cool, dark place for 1 month, and this is the result. As you can see, the color has changed quite a bit, and I'm really excited to taste the results. Cracking into this thing, the first thing I've got to take out is that bag we used to weigh everything down. You might see that white stuff floating on top. That is not mold, that is yeast. Unlike mold, this yeast is harmless. However, it can throw off the flavor a bit, so I'm just going to use a ladle to scoop it all out to discard. Now I'm just using a slotted spoon to scoop my ingredients into a blender. You can see I'm draining it some, but it's not imperative to get all of the brine off the ingredients. In fact, that lends a lot of the salty flavor to the sauce. Because these ingredients are still pretty wet, the only extra liquid I'm going to add before I blend it is 1 cup of distilled white vinegar. Now I'm just going to blend my sauce well. Add that blended sauce to a large pot. I love how the orangey color from the peaches carried through in this one. It just looks great. Bringing the sauce to a boil will stop fermentation and help to sanitize everything. So I bring it to a boil and then let it simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes. Hot sauce consistency is really a personal preference, but I want this one to be thin, mainly so I can use a dropper on my bottle just to be able to lightly spritz it on things. So to do that, I'm going to use this fine mesh and just ladle the hot sauce in, and then use the ladle to force the liquid through into a clean pan below. As you can see, I'm just consistently scraping the pulp off of this mesh and then using the ladle to force more liquid through. This is a pretty slow process, but we really want to get every drop out of this sauce. Eventually, you'll end up with solely pulp in your screen. Here I'm still pressing it and getting a few drops out. I won't let all this pulp material go to waste though, because it's going to have the same great flavors that our sauce will. I'm thinking I'll take it and mix it with some lime juice and then use it to marinate some chicken in, or maybe even dehydrate it, break it up, and use it as a rub. Let me know if you have any other ideas. Here you can see the final consistency of my sauce. All that's left to do now is bottle the sauce. As you can see from the steam coming off that pot, I did boil it once more just to ensure it was clean before this step. Now I'm just using a funnel to ladle the sauce into my clean bottles. Like I mentioned before, I am using the droppers on these bottles since this is a thinner sauce. Once I have them all snapped on, I'll screw on the lids and then actually flip the bottle upside down to cool so that while the sauce is still hot, it'll sanitize these parts of the lid. I used the cardboard that these bottles came in to hold them in that upside down position. It works perfectly for it, so be sure not to throw that away when you're unpacking your bottles. Here's the final product. I love how this sauce came out. The color is great, and it's sweet and tangy, but still has a good kick. Thank you so much for watching.